You're joined by News 4 aviation expert Bob Miller. Bob, thank you so much for coming in this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jordan.
So let's start by talking about this close call in California. I was reading up on the conversation between the air traffic controller and the United pilot,
Right.
and they were talking about a resolution advisory. Can you talk a little bit about that and, why it's so crucial?
Right. All commercial aircraft airliners have something called TCAS, Traffic Collision Warning System. And if there is an aircraft within about 3 miles or 5 miles, they'll get a TA, a traffic advisory. If it comes within 1,000 feet or 500 feet vertically, they get a resolution advisory and a command to move the airplane up, down, left, or right. The pilot must follow that.
Interesting. And in these cases, do we know that those systems, that at least they were in place, did they help perhaps save what could have been another catastrophe?
Absolutely. They saved the day. Those systems worked exactly as they were supposed to. Unfortunately, ATC, traffic control, was not operating the way it's supposed to be. In that airspace, within 5 miles of a tower-controlled airport, the aircraft must be in contact with the tower, and the tower must be giving them directions on which way to fly. In this case, the tower permitted them to lose separation.
So based off your understanding, just how close was this?
Very close. Once you get a resolution advisory, the pilot has no choice. He has to follow the command that is issued by the computer, because it is that close, very close.
You were talking about an air traffic controller in this situation. Obviously, that was part of the conversation just this past week with the crash at LaGuardia, the video we're seeing now. Air traffic controller, again, part of that conversation. In fact, the audio that we heard after that, Bob, was an air traffic controller talking to another pilot saying, "I lost my attention, I made a mistake." In both of these situations, now we're talking about also one of the hardest jobs out there, right? Without question. But here we are in two situations, some similarities.
Yeah, the tower controller was doing his job, but under enormous pressure at that point. The person who had the capability of preventing that accident, unfortunately, as the facts are coming out, was the driver of the fire truck. You have a traffic light right out of your parking lot. When that traffic light is green, do you go straight out without looking left or right?
No.
Better
not.
The fire truck driver was following the clearance. He did what was legally required, but judgment-wise, to pull out in front of an active runway, that airplane landing at night had landing lights literally twice as bright as the high beams on your car. It would be almost impossible. I don't see how he could not have seen that aircraft landing.
Bob, if you can, take us into the cockpit, if you will. When it comes to these last-second maneuvers, what does pilot training look like to prepare pilots for those kinds of situations?
There was nothing those two pilots could do, absolutely nothing. Once their thrust reversers were activated, that airplane there's nothing more they can do with it but bring it to a stop. There was some discussion, perhaps, if he saw it in time, he could have gone around. But at that point, it was too late. Those pilots were they had absolutely no control over the situation.
Here we are talking about 3 incidents that have happened somewhat recently here. And of course, we're talking about last year's disaster over D.C. It still is the safest mode of transportation, despite the fact that we're seeing these incidents happening, some of them catastrophic, some of them not. It's still a safe way to travel.
There are about 25,000 takeoff and landings at tower-controlled airports every year. 25,000. I don't recall the last accident quite like this. Now, unfortunately, we do have a problem. There's about 1,700 runway incursions. That's an aviation term that describes a situation where somebody is on a runway that shouldn't be. And with 1,700 of those a year, this is a high priority of the FAA to resolve those. But still, we're dealing with human factors in a very busy environment.
I know it's something Dave already mentioned, but the collision over DC happened just over a year ago, and we were talking about some of the regulations and the rules that have changed. Can you kind of go through some of that for us?
Yes. Back at the DC accident, there was something called a VFR corridor, Visual Flight Rule Corridor, where an aircraft could go down a very narrow lane into the runway, into the airport traffic area without involving the controller. That accident in Washington, D.C. eliminated that. So there is no way you can go through this visual avenue, if you will, today. That rule was eliminated just about 1 month ago. So did it get fully disseminated out to the towers? It should have, certainly. But in this case, it resulted in a nasty, almost nasty collision.
We continue to have a lot of attention on our airports these days, what with TSA and with funding and, of course, with air traffic controllers and more. Bob, we thank you for your expertise. It is always important, especially with so many people being impacted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
You.